¿Qué tal amigos? Como saben, estamos en una batalla cultural y sobre todo en una guerra espiritual. Y por eso es que debemos de estar cada vez más unidos. Y por eso hoy les tengo un invitado muy especial que nos va a hablar en español, pero no se preocupen, para los que no saben inglés vamos a tener subtítulos, haremos ese esfuerzo por ustedes. Pero es importante sobre todo para los varones que tengan referentes saludables y para las mujeres que nos podamos relajar un poquito. ¿Por qué? Porque cargamos una cruz muy pesada. La deconstrucción del varón nos ha quitado ese respaldo, esa columna, ese aliciente a nuestros San José. Así que por eso tenemos hoy en pantalla a Ian Smith. Él es autor, es emprendedor, es constructor y como le dije fuera de cámaras, es un San José. Así que a partir de ahora vamos a hablar en inglés. Welcome, Ian. I just introduced you. Just so you know, Saint Joseph in Spanish, San José.
Well, thank you. That's quite the compliment. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So something that I saw on your page, on your Instagram, that I liked a lot was, if we see relations between men and women so harmed, it's up to men to fix it. So if men, especially from a Christian perspective, if men are the head of the household, then men should lead the fight. What can you say in that aspect?
Well, there is this ongoing sort of battle of the sexes, especially online, between what I would call very resentful men and I think very misled women. And it's a product of a lot of societal forces. A lot of them are very subversive forces that have been pushed on, not just the American culture, but pushed throughout the Christian world. Quite honestly, the Western world, and it does not just apply to America. It's, you see it everywhere. You see it throughout Europe, and I'm sure that there are many other places as well. And there's a lot of things that you can point the finger at and really blame, and then there's a lot of things that have just really worked to undermine the strong and the sacred bond between men and women, and it's things like feminism, the extreme versions of feminism, the second and the third wave of feminism, where young women are taught that they don't need men and that they should prioritize their career, and somehow being a mother is this bad role that is forced upon them. And then there's all these other factors that twist the minds of men. This culture that somehow women are disposable, and that you should date as many women as possible, and all of these things coming in from different angles have created a very, very precarious and I think very fractured relationship between men and women. And the fact of the matter is that we need each other. We've always needed each other. Men have built the world, but without women, they would just be a bunch of guys sitting around waiting to die. Women are what allows us to bring new life into the world. It allows us to have those softer elements of society and relationships, and a different perspective on things. And if you look back at any strong culture throughout the world, that bond between men and women was very sacred, and it was protected. The Germanic tribes of Europe were known to bring their women to war with them because their counsel was because they didn't believe in leaving their women unprotected at all, and they would rather them be close with them at all times, but also because they valued their perspective greatly, and when there were hard decisions to be made, these strong men, these warriors, sought counsel in the women that they loved and the women in their community, and it was valued, and they had a beautiful culture as a result of it. And you look at, say, a civilization that has declined. You look at ancient Rome. And one of the hallmarks of the decline of ancient Rome was the decline of the nuclear family, where, you know, promiscuity started to just take a foothold, and those relationships had just fallen apart, and the decline of the society followed very quickly along with it. And you look at the United States and the Western world today and the Christian world today, and you know, not that the issue with men and women is the only thing that's sort of fueling the decline, but it's hard to ignore at this point, because you see so much online where there's these men who position themselves as leaders, and all they want to do is blame women for the ills of society. You see it, a perfect example is politically. You know, the political discussion here in the United States is like, everybody blames women for voting, you know, that the fact that women vote, and that, you know, a lot of them, which is true, voted, you know, Democrat and liberal, and along with that came all of these really bad destructive policies. And that is true, but it's not the fault of women who have been misled or misguided that this has gone down. Men have allowed that. They've allowed it to happen. You know, they're missing the point when they place the blame squarely on the shoulders of women for all these things, because fundamentally it is a man's job to lead. That is directly from the mouth of God. That is not some societal construct that is optional. That is nature and the way of life itself. You can see it anywhere you look. And if you're a man, and you have an issue with the way that women are reacting, you have a duty to show them better, to whether that be to educate them, whether that be to educate them through your own example. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to get into a debate. It means that you have to show them the right way. So, you know, a lot of men don't like to hear that. A lot of men would prefer to just say, you know, and you see it so much, and it's such a negative outlook on the problem. And what it is it's focusing on the problem and not the solution. You know, at the end of the day, the tangled relationship, or the tangled relationship between modern men and women is like a giant ball of yarn. And if you pluck at it long enough, you can find something to blame somebody else about. But it is the duty of men, if they do wish to change it, to be the driving force behind the change. And that is hard. It's hard work. Leadership is hard work. That's why it's put on the shoulders of men. You know, because that is what they are built to do. They're built to endure conflict and suffering and whatever else comes with it. And I want, especially young men, there's so many young men who are looking at the way young women are behaving, which, you know, a lot of it is abhorrent. It's horrible behavior. They're sexually promiscuous. They have, you know, they're all pornographers, you know, and there's a lot of it. But focusing on the bad women and just telling all women that the problems are because of these bad women is never going to get a woman to listen to you. You know, and instead what I suggest is praise the good women, because there are plenty of them out there. You know, just because the debate and the discussion seems to be front and center doesn't mean that all people are like that. At the end of the day, we have a world full of people who are seeking connection, men and women who are seeking what they're biologically designed to do, which is to fall in love, which is to form a union, and which is to create a family. That is hardwired within each and every one of us, no matter how much societal programming and nonsense comes your way. And as a young man, instead of just saying women are bad, look at all these bad examples of women. I don't want these women. I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna continue to trash women and they're all garbage. It's just a terrible plan for your life. Because if you have that mindset, you won't find a good woman. You know, if you're driving on the road and you're looking for red cars, you will see a lot of red cars, and chances are you'll miss all the ones that are white. or whatever color you're not looking for. So, you know, I want to help young men see that, yes, there is a problem. No, there is nobody specifically to blame, but yes, you are responsible for changing it. And that starts with your actions as an individual. It starts with how you conduct yourself as a man. Just because the world is full of loose women who are out at the bars on Fridays and are promiscuous doesn't mean that you have to pay any attention to those women, because you can find good women in other places. Stop going out to the bars and start going to church. Or go to the gym, or find another woman and lean into her. And not only will you be happier, but you'll be an example for others who see what you have and realize that it is very possible to have good, healthy relationships with women. And people don't want to do that, though. They want to sit around and moan and complain. And you know, the responses I get from that, there's a lot of good responses, but the responses that I get when I post stuff like that is like, oh, I don't understand how bad it is, and I don't understand, you know, this and that because I'm 38 and I don't get what it's like. But the fact of the matter is I do, because I was a young man once, and this was still prevalent, you know, when I was 21 years old. And it just comes down to personal choice. And people just, in general, not even about this topic, people don't like to have to put in the work themselves. They want somebody else to fix the problem. They want to snap their fingers. If it's politically, they want to go and vote and then just assume that all the problems will be fixed. But the reality is that any problem we have, culturally, politically, is on the shoulders of men to figure it out, what needs to be done to fix it, and to live that yourself. You can't lead unless you're somebody who people will follow. And that was one of the hallmarks of all the great leaders, you know, throughout history, especially all the really virtuous, strong leaders. You look at somebody like Alexander the Great, who conquered most of the known world when he was 30-something years old. Alexander the Great was respected by his enemies because he wasn't brutal for no reason. And he respected rules, and he had discipline, and he valued other people's culture while preserving his own. And there were all these great things about him, but people followed him and loved him because he lived what he believed. And in order for men to fix this problem, you know, because women can't fix it. Women can't fix it because women aren't supposed to fix it. If a woman gets up right now and has a big following and tries to tell men what to do, they're not going to listen. They never do. You know, because we're not at that point. But if a strong man stands up and says, hey, everybody needs to cut this nonsense out, and we need to focus on uplifting each other. And that doesn't mean you can't be critical of things that you don't like. But you say it with love in your heart. You don't say it to demean the person. You know, you don't say it to make them feel bad. You know, something I said on one of my posts is that, you know, if men are so upset with the OnlyFans culture of women, you know, don't subscribe. Obviously, you know, you can't hate on these women and also follow them on Instagram. That doesn't work like that. But don't demean them. Tell them that Jesus loves them. And that you hope that they see the error in their ways, and that if they ever want to talk to you about it, that you would be there. And chances are you won't get a response, but guess what? That person might read that, and you plant that seed of love in their heart, because very few people find God when they're in a good place. I certainly didn't. And you don't know what that person's going through. And by being nasty to them, you're only going to fuel that negativity and that darkness that is in their heart. And you're going to help push them further away from God and closer to the devil, because they're going to see that and they're going to get angry. Whereas if they see that message where it says, you know what, I don't like what you do, but you are a beautiful person. You are a child of God, and God loves you. And I hope that one day that you see that you are living in sin, and that we all do, but that you are not beyond redemption at any point, and that you can change today. Isn't that a much better way to handle it? You know, and I just hope that men can see that. It doesn't have to be so hard and so cold and so vicious. And both parties are hurt. We have a bunch of hurt people walking around, who have been hurt by this person or that person, and they carry it into the next person, and they judge people based on it. And in reality is you have to let that go, and you have to just start being better yourself before you expect any better out of anybody else.
I really like that you pointed that out. And someone who did that was Tristan Tate. After this girl was with like 1,000 guys in one day, he said the next time she does something like that, take a Bible. Yeah. Speak to her about the Word of God. I've done it with a couple of these girls, and if we speak about statistics, in the US, 1 out of 10 women are on OnlyFans, which is a lot.
That's insane.
But it also means that 9 out of 10 aren't.
Exactly. So you can't, because it is a lot, and that is a concern. That is a very concerning number. But just like you said, there are more that don't do it. So why are you continuing to push the conversation only to that and not to, and you can still talk about that, but instead of saying you're such a bad person, you're going to hell, you're a sinner, all this stuff, say, look at what these women are doing over here. Look at this woman. She's a mother. She's a mother and she has a business. Hey, you could do that too. And she has a man who loves her and protects her. Don't you want that? And I saw exactly what you said about Tristan, and Tristan has some great ideas. He and I have, chatted back and forth a couple times. And I love that, because he's an example of a man that is in the position to influence other men to think differently. And
without putting him down, because I love his content, Andrew, you do see the difference between a Muslim and a Christian because of that sensitivity, that love, that outreach, which is comprehensible due to many things. But I don't know if it has an English edition, but for my followers and for you too, if you're ever eager to learn Spanish, this book is amazing, 700 pages. It's called Yo Julia, which in English means I, Julia. The motto is men build empires, women build dynasties. So it's about what a mother did to make sure not only that her husband was emperor, but that her sons would be emperors too. So it really shows you about the ancient world, power struggles. And but when you said at the beginning about how women were in the Germanic area, she would wash his wardrobe full of blood before battle. So that's so powerful, that support. So what women do is sometimes undermined. Maybe historically we don't know much about it, but it's so important. And just a historical fact, when women's vote was proposed in Spain, the socialists were against it because they said that women would vote conservative. So historically, women wouldn't have voted left or liberal. Our grandmothers would not have voted for progressive ideas. So it's not that women's vote made leftist politics, but leftist politics needed women to be leftist. Yes. In order for feminism to thrive.
And they put a lot of work into making that happen, because you're right, it is very counterintuitive to a woman's nature to not vote conservative, because that's what women that the title and the idea of that book is beautiful, and it is, because men build, but women create something that is long lasting, because you can't just be all brick and mortar and logic and reason and hard rationality. There has to be that balance in order for something to be long lasting. And that is the way of the world. Again, you can see it anywhere you look. The subtle and very, very intricate balance between dark and light, and between logic and emotion, and so on and so on and so on. And without that balance, you are going to skew in one direction, and it's not something that can last. If the world was full of nothing but men, the world would be nothing but conflict. Because there would be nothing else to do. And if the world was run entirely by women, chances are not much would get done. But when you meet in the middle, there's that perfect synergy. And the story of the empress who created the dynasty, there's nothing more beautiful than that. because you have the front-facing, hard exterior, the man who creates the perimeter around the woman and everything else, and inside of that is where she flourishes. You know, a home is not a home without a woman. You know, I could have a $10 million mansion, but if I come home to it at the end of the day, it's a cold and lonely place. And if you put a woman in there who loves a man, you come home to an entirely different home. It's warm and it's comfortable, and it's a place where you can recharge and gather your thoughts and not always be on guard and all of that. And you know, to pretend as a man or a woman that you don't want or need the other is a denial of everything that is true, and most importantly, the Word of God. You know, he gave man woman as his companion, as and not just as a companion, like something to take care of, but as somebody who would be synergistic to bring him further into life, to help him create life, and to help him create good life. And it's so obvious that sometimes it makes me laugh. Because, you know, so many people have just gotten so far away from just fundamental truth.
Absolutely, yeah. And the fact that woman came from man's rib says a lot, because to be by his side, not under, not over. And I like to make a joke. I've never made it in English, so I hope it comes out okay. That no man ever got offended, and I'm sure you won't be the first. That when God made Adam, it wasn't enough. But when he made Eve, that was it. So man is the rough draft and woman is the final draft, which also makes us co-creators, because life comes through us. And like my dad lovingly says, that his greatest honor was that I was in him first. So now feminists say, every man came from a uterus. Yeah, which was fertilized by, what exited a man's body. So the thing is, we're not one without the other. So that should be made very clear. And before we go too far from what you said initially, since we mentioned Saint Joseph so much, the fact that you said that man should lead through example, for those who know scripture, Saint Joseph is never quoted in the Bible. And that is so important, especially for how we call it in Spanish, Protestants are separated brothers and sisters, or are awaited brothers and sisters, is that it's so scripture driven. However, it's so symbolic that he's not quoted, because he's known through example. So our deeds are so important. And as men, deeds are so important. And as that father figure, as that husband figure, it's so important. And I'm not going against anyone. On the contrary, I'm adding through love, through example, what such a great father showed. So before I let you go, so we won't go too long, if you could give men a few tips as to how they could lead, and of course to women to let go a bit and not to want to always lead, or to be able to relax, because the modern world has us, I mean, even sicknesses like, I can't remember the name, I can't remember the name in English, but there's a disease that women get more frequently because they're so overexposed, so under pressure. Fibromyalgia, is it in English?
Fibromyalgia, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's stress is a huge factor in that.
I have a very good friend. She was the first woman on a German submarine, and she would bake cakes on the submarine, and she would train as hard as her male counterparts. And now she has fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
So women can do anything, but you pay a price.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So if you give us a few tips, that would be great.
starting with women, you know, and I see it so often where women, because of whatever it is that led them there, have developed these hyper masculine traits as sort of like a defense mechanism against the world. You know, they're told that they're supposed to be strong and independent, you know, and obviously you don't want to be like a helpless damsel in distress. You know, obviously there's there's some room for a woman to have walls and to have barriers and stuff like that. But women today have built these walls so high that they wind up taking on a lot of the characteristics of men. And one of them that you see so often is like combativeness. Men are not meant to be agreeable. We have high levels of testosterone. And the reason we're not meant to be agreeable is because that's how you weed out all of the BS. By saying, hey, that's not a good idea. I don't agree with you. And I'm going to conflict with you over it, whether that be verbally or otherwise. But women have taken on that combative behavior where there's always a need to be heard. There's always a need for them to be right. Whereas taking a much softer approach, and that doesn't mean like you can't have an opinion or like anything like that, but to soften up a little bit and to watch more than they speak when it comes to men. Just like you have women or men blaming men blaming women for everything, you have women who have grown so distrustful of men through their own bad experiences that they write every single one of them off. And then they also have these like really absurd, and both sides have these absurd standards because they think that the world is just full of options. They have social media and they can just go follow somebody else and go on another date. And the reality is that every time a man or a woman that you engage with somebody, especially in a sexual manner, you're giving them a part of yourself. You're giving them your time. You're giving them your energy. You're giving them a part of your heart, part of your soul. And women now have given so much of themselves, and men too, but women have given so much of themselves that they've built these huge walls around themselves now where they won't trust a man just because he's a man. And it makes it very, very difficult with these hyper masculine traits, with the combativeness, with the high walls, with the hyper independence. None of those things make women attractive at all. A man does not want a woman who is always sort of at odds with him. That doesn't mean that women can't share their opinions and help guide him, but so many women today won't let a man lead because they've been misled. So it's an interesting scenario. So do the walls come down first and you open yourself up to potentially some bad things, or do you keep the wall up and do you make a man hammer at it away for years? And there's somewhere in the middle. My advice to women would be to ease off a little bit of those masculine characteristics, not to let the walls down fully, but to at least be able to entertain the idea of allowing a man to lead them before they're fully committed. You can do there's tests a woman can give and allow a man to build trust without being within the walls of some grand fortress, but still being protected in the meantime. And I think that's just a reduction and an easing of these hypermasculine characteristics. In order to find something great, or to get anything great, there's always a certain amount of risk involved. I'm in business. Every business I've started, there's been an initial risk. And the same thing goes with your heart when it comes to love. There is a certain amount of risk that you have to allow to happen in order for you to find that thing that will truly, truly make you happy. And so many women are just so guarded today. And I've run into it in the past where I may have really liked this woman and I could really see things that were potentially, I saw a lot of good in her, but it got to the point where it's like, I'm done banging my head on this wall, trying to get you to allow me to be who I am, which is a leader. Somebody who genuinely cares about you, who wants to protect you and who wants to provide for you and all these things. So just really easing off of that a little bit. I think would go a really, really long way. And there's a ton of other things. But I think just in general, just, acknowledging the fact that as a woman in today's world, especially if you're a single woman, especially if you're a woman who's been screwed over before, acknowledging the fact that whether or not you ever meant to, you've probably taken on some masculine attributes. And to acknowledge that, and then to think about what you really want on the opposite of that, the kind of woman that you would like to be in a perfect world. How soft would you be? How would you spend your time? What would your interests be? What do you want? You know what I mean? Like, think about things like finding a man and having children and all of those things, and just be open to it. And look at those two things, because you can't get from one to the other, and find somewhere in the middle where you protect yourself as a woman. You don't do anything stupid. You never put yourself in a bad situation, but that you're open to the idea that there is a man out there who will fill that role for you. And that's the best I can say for that. And as far as men need to just really wake up and cut the victim mindset that somehow, they're just these, and I get it. Men have been victimized. Men have been shamed. We've been told that we're toxic and all of that. But I don't care what anybody says about me. I know who I am, and every man should know who they are. And the opinions, there's a fantastic book written, and it is in Spanish for your listeners. It's written by a good friend of mine. His name is Jack Donovan. I recommend this book for any man of any ages. He wrote it like 12 years ago, and he's got some other ones, but the book is called The Way of Men. And it talks about the ideas about what a man actually is. It's one of the best books I've ever read by far. And a couple of the takeaways from that book is men and masculinity is defined by the relationships that men have with other men, not by the relationships or the opinions of women, because women value men that other men value. They value that set of characteristics that rises to the top in that tribe mentality of men who sharpen each other, who make each other better, who hold each other accountable, who develop discipline together, who are powerful men, who are strong men, who are capable of bad things, but choose to be good men. So all these men are worried about today, these opinions of them, most of them that have come from these subversive forces that are pushing our society overly feminine. Ignore them all and focus on being a good man. Don't worry. If you're a young single man and you're disheartened and you think there's no good women out there, then you know what? Maybe you should believe that for a little while, and maybe you should only focus on being a good man. And you should focus all of your time and energy developing your value as a man, developing the fundamental qualities of a man, things like discipline, things like capacity, things like the ability to sacrifice, things like hard work, so on and so forth. All of these qualities will, if you foster them and lean into them, they will turn you into a much better man. And when you open your eyes and decide to look around once again after you're out of that period, you will be looking right into the eyes of a woman who is of equal value, and you don't have to go chase to do any of these things, and you don't have to try to find a good woman, because a good woman will find you, because she will see everything that you are, and in the process, all of these other men who are a part of whatever tribe that you're a part of, your community, your family, your country, whatever it is, your followers on Instagram, they will see you getting better, and there is something inside a man that says, I need to do that too. And you will inspire others, and you are so much more powerful to change the world around you than you know. But you don't change the world by pointing out what everybody else is doing wrong. You change the world by, there's a Gandhi quote, be the change that you wish to see in the world, or however it goes. There couldn't be anything more true. So live that example. Stop focusing on the problem and that there's no good women and whatever BS excuse that you have, and focus on that more than anything else. And one of the takeaways from that book, there's a chapter in it called No Arguments. I'm going to mess it up. I have it right here. Hold on. I don't have it right here. Where'd it go? Oh, I'm sorry. I gave it away, actually. No arguments, no excuses, and no explanations. That was a really powerful chapter. And the idea of the chapter is as a man, developing yourself is the most important thing that you can do. And along the way, there will be plenty of time for arguments. But Jack says in the book that all three of those things, arguments, excuses, and explanations, or excuse me, arguments, apologies, and explanations. I had totally butchered that. All of those things you reserve for people that you love. If I argue with you, it's because I care that we have a differing point of view, and that the ultimate goal of that argument is to, at the very least, understand you a little bit more and potentially come closer to you, bring you closer to me. You don't argue with people that you don't care about. Excuses, or explanations. If I explain something to you, it's because I love you, because I cherish what you think about me, and I need you to understand why I did something or why I'm doing something. And all of those things are something that men should focus on. We spend so much time validating ourselves in society, trying to explain who we are or why we're this way. And, if you're true to yourself and you reserve those things for the people that you truly care about, and focus on all those things I said, developing these qualities of what really makes a man, the problem will resolve itself. Because even if women don't take those steps, that I mentioned before of becoming less masculine and letting that guard down, they will when you become a better man. I don't know I have a lot of really good friends, a lot of really great men in my circle. Not a single one of them complains about women. They're all very disciplined. They're all very successful in business. They're all happy and healthy. And even the ones who are single, they do not drag women through the mud. And there's no shortage of women that are interested in them. And there's plenty of bad ones that are interested in them, and there's plenty of good ones. But no man who has his life together and is excelling in life is blaming women for anything. It's always the losers. It's always the low performers. And you have to look at yourself as a man. And if that's who you are, maybe you really need to reevaluate yourself, because I don't know one highly successful man who is valuable and who adds to the world, and changes the world, who has ever complained about women or spoken negatively about women or shamed women. So, if that's who you are, then you will continue to be a loser, and you will continue to find what you are looking for, which is a reason for your insignificance. And if you do the opposite and you focus on yourself, chances are you won't have any complaints. And in the process, you'll change the culture.
For the better.
For the better. For the better. Yes. Yeah.
So there's a quote in Spanish that says, "You're cruel, but just."
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed yourself. It was very enlightening, very enriching. We need more voices like you in Spanish, but in the meantime, we'll have you subtitled. And looking forward to next time. If you have any final words, feel free.
No, that's it. If anybody wants to follow along on social media, I'm on Instagram and on X as Ian Smith Fitness. If there's any young men watching and they have any questions, I do answer my DMs. I try to get to each and every one of them. And if you send me a message and you have a genuine question and I don't get to it, just send another one, because I will. I think it's important to provide whatever insight I have, which isn't all of it, but it is a good bit of it. I've learned quite a bit. And if I can ever be of any use, that's where you can find me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bienvenidos a mi canal, soy Mamela Fiallo Flores. Si les gustó lo que vieron, no olviden ir a comentarios y decirme qué más quisieran ver. Recuerden que ustedes eligen los contenidos que salen en este canal. Y por supuesto, si quieren apoyar, a través de Patreon pueden dejar sus donaciones. Recuerden, el enemigo está bien preparado y bien financiado, mientras que a nosotros que nos atrevemos a dar la contrabatalla y que nadamos contracorriente, nos cortan espacios, sobre todo en el plano académico, y en los medios alternativos realmente remamos en dulce de leche. Así que más que bienvenido a cualquier colaboración y su apoyo en este canal y en todos los espacios.